If you're doing A-levels this year, you guys have it tough. You have never done real exams before because GCSE and NEAS levels would have been these COVID prediction grades, and you've also missed loads of school, and you're expected to be thrown into the deep end for the most important school exams whilst also making a university application, and you basically only have one shot at them. Hello everyone, I'm Sam, and if you watch this video, you'll know that my journey through A-levels was not necessarily the most smooth. And I'm going to talk about some problems I clearly had in hindsight that I faced that I know definitely loads of people will relate to. My A-levels were maths, history and Greek, but the first section I'm going to talk about how I revised for Greek and how I revised for history. The way our Greek A-level worked was we had to learn a big bit of Greek text, so it's not one where you do speaking and everything like that. So when I was learning my Greek set text, I was super eager not to forget it. I thought every week, if I learn it then and go through my whole set text every single time, I'll come to the end and know it really well. But by the time you're a half term or a term in, you have now hundreds of lines. It was so unfeasible for me to carry on because every single weekend I would go home and be adding more on, but still be revising the same bits at the start. So the revision just got longer and longer and longer each weekend. On top of that, obviously, of course, the stuff that I was doing at the start, I knew really well. So I knew it was a waste of time going over it again, but I wasn't quite sure how long I could leave it until I didn't forget it, because I didn't want to wait too long and then kind of have to learn it more or less from scratch again. And now let's talk about the opposite of that, which is something I think I did for history. So for A-level history, one of the things you have to do are prepare for some essays. And so again, each weekend, whichever essay or subject we'd looked at in history for that week, I would go home and write a few hundred words on a Word document, just going through, this is the title, this is what I would write in the intro, this is how I would conclude it, these are the main points I would do. And this wouldn't be too bad, except once I wrote it, I would really not look at it ever again until it came to the end. And so when it comes to revise for your mocks or for your real exams, I've done the complete opposite of Greek here, where I was doing it way too much. I basically written these things, but then I just left it too long to revisit these topics, so I just had to learn them more or less from scratch. And I knew, I guess, both of these things whilst I was revising for these subjects, but I couldn't work out a way to change my methods to ensure that I was revising the material again a short enough amount of time that I hadn't completely forgotten it, but still a long enough amount of time that I wasn't going over stuff that I definitely knew and was just wasting my time doing that revision. So I never understood really how to get that sweet spot. I'm sure you guys relate to that. So let me talk about exactly how to solve this issue. And the answer is spaced repetition. It basically solves the space between revising for each of these things in order that, as we talked about, it's short enough that you haven't completely forgotten it, but it's long enough that you're not revising it before you need to and wasting your time. I've already made a video about spaced repetition, so feel free to check it out in more detail, but it's an absolute game changer. There are plenty of places you can put your notes, and it will kind of tell you exactly when to look at it again, because it tests you, and depending on whether you get it right or wrong, if you get it right, it will wait longer for the next time to give it to you again, and if it gets it wrong, it will make it shorter. So you sift through your notes in order that it's always more or less a right time period for you to come back to it. So you're not wasting your time, but you haven't left it too long that you've forgotten it and kind of have to start from scratch. So where I put my notes now is a spaced repetition system called Anki. A spaced repetition system is basically just a system or an app that works out the spaced repetition for you. And I would also have worked really well for history because I could have put my information in and then I would know every however long it tells me, and it takes just as long as possible for me to revise it again, but not long enough that I can no longer recall the information, and so I really would have built it up in my long-term memory. So yeah, spaced repetition, if you've never heard about it before, it's an absolute game changer, and it works really well with the second thing that we're going to talk about in terms of my maths. But before we get on to maths, just a quick public service announcement. I actually got this idea from a subscriber who wanted me to do this, and I thought it sounded really good, so I did. So again, if you have any other suggestions, the channel's at a size where I can just really interact with you guys, obviously, and whatever you want to do, I can probably make. So please do comment. And at the same time, also, please do consider subscribing if you want to see more videos about me studying, sometimes literally studying like this, and in the future when I go to Oxford, I'll be studying Oxford Life. But I have some really exciting videos coming up that I'm really looking forward to making. I've got my first collab, I've got a reaction video, packing video. I think it's going to be brilliant. So please do stick around. But onto the maths. In maths, there are loads of different topics. And in the maths lesson, we might do a specific topic, and I would be like, yeah, I understand how that topic works. And the teacher would say, do as many questions from this exercise that relate to the topic as you think you will need in order that you know how to do the topic well. And I definitely thought sometimes, oh, well, I understood the example on the board, I understand the example in the book, I don't need to do that many questions because I get how it works. But of course, that's not how it works. You have to really be testing yourself and doing these questions. And my marks were never that good, and I could never understand quite why in maths, because I knew how to do it, but when I would come to the questions, I sometimes couldn't always apply the knowledge that I had, even though I fully understood the example. And since leaving school, I've worked out that exactly what my maths teacher was saying to me is basically active recall. And active recall is a revision technique that says in order to strengthen the links between pieces of information, you need to actively test yourself on them. So if you're just reading notes or reading examples and understanding it, it's not making as strong a connection as if you were to actually do the question yourself. And that process of trying to do it yourself, either being able to do or getting it wrong and then fixing it, forms a much stronger connection in your brain than just reading through the steps and not really kind of testing yourself or recalling that information. So this is the other thing that I think is an absolute game changer. And of course, these two things work really nicely together. If you put your notes into Anki, as we were talking about earlier for your spaced repetition, when it comes to it, there's an element of active recall as well, because it will show you one part of the flashcard and you have to really test yourself on the other side. And that process of basically testing yourself is exactly how you learn much more efficiently. So these two things, spaced repetition and active recall, should absolutely form the basis of your revision, whether it be for year 13, or if you're watching this age GCSE, or if you're watching this during uni. This is just objectively the best, scientifically proven way to revise. I have seen quite a few videos about this so far, because a lot of people, especially those that make videos, are obviously aware of these ideas because they've either watched other videos on it, or just are quite interested in this stuff. But I don't feel bad about kind of copying this either, because number one, of course, this came from a comment. Another reminder, if you want to see something like this, please do comment it. But number two, if any of you have not seen this before, and this was the video that introduced it to you for the first time, honestly, it's such a game changer. I sometimes say that quite a lot. I love making that video about what are my favourite weird things to bring to university, but this is just objectively the way your brain best works to absorb information. So please do try it out, and honestly, it will make it way more time efficient and your grades will just increase. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.